World War II stretched across continents, took tens of millions of lives, and reshaped the world. 70 plus years later, it still casts long shadows over our politics, our societies, and our imaginations. Historians have combed through archives, divers have explored sunken wrecks, and scientists have tested fragments of bone and steel. Yet the war left behind puzzles that defy easy answers. Stacks of reports describe the route of a convoy, the manifest of a train, the deployment of a fighter wing. Photographs freeze moments of triumph and horror. But between those records lie gaps. What cargo disappeared from a remote airfield? Whose hand betrayed a hidden family? Where did lost shipments of treasure end up? Even when a record seems to settle a question, rumor and speculation take root in the absence of closure. People seek patterns, attach symbolic meaning to dates and numbers, and propose conspiracies to explain the unexplainable. Our obsession with these mysteries tells us as much about ourselves as about the events. In this film, we explore 25 questions that history still cannot answer with full confidence. Each mystery rests on firm facts: a ship that sank, a treasure that vanished, a man who disappeared, an artifact that was looted. But beyond those facts lie competing interpretations, alternative narratives, and haunting possibilities. From the bloodied corridors of Hitler's bunker to the depths of the Philippine jungle, from the deserts of North Africa to the ice fields of the Antarctic, we follow the threads. Records confirm what happened. What happened next divides historians. These mysteries invite us to pause, reflect on the limits of knowledge, and acknowledge that even a war waged with modern bureaucracy and technology can leave behind unresolved stories. In the 1930s, a branch of the SS called the unsolved set out to prove that the Aryan race had divine origins. Its scholars and adventurers traveled to Tibet, Scandinavia, and the Middle East. Records confirm that Heinrich Himmler authorized expeditions to study runestones, to map ancient sites, and to collect artifacts. One team, working under the pseudoscientific banner of Germanic heritage research, examined the Externstein rock formation and declared it a pagan sanctuary. Another scoured Roman catacombs for evidence of a Germanic Christ. A leading hypothesis argues that some unsolved officers dreamed of finding the Ark of the Covenant, believing it would legitimize Nazi ideology by connecting it to biblical power. Critics counter that these searches were largely propaganda. Inventories of captured art list thousands of paintings and sculptures, but no holy relics. No document proves that the Ark or the spear that pierced Christ's side was ever within Nazi reach. The story of the Spear of Longinus rests on the claims of post-war authors, not wartime logs. Researchers disagree about whether Hitler personally embraced occult quests. Records portray him as dismissive of mystical pursuits, yet he indulged Himmler's fantasies when they served as propaganda. The image of SS officers riffling through Ethiopian monasteries for the Ark endures because it dramatizes the moral corruption at the regime's core. The vivid picture is of scholars in crisp uniforms handling ancient parchments under flickering candlelight while outside their world burned. The truth is less cinematic. Pseudoscientists misused archaeology to justify racial ideology and plundered cultural sites. The quest for sacred relics reflects the fusion of myth and power in the Third Reich, but there is no evidence that the Nazis ever found or even seriously sought the Ark. Martin Bormann was one of Hitler's closest aides and wielded enormous influence in the Nazi hierarchy. As Berlin fell in May 1945, Bormann vanished. Eyewitnesses saw him leave the Führer bunker with a group of SS men during the night of the 1st to the 2nd of May. Records confirm that he and his companions tried to break through Soviet lines near the Lehrter station. For decades, rumors placed him in Rome, Argentina, Paraguay, or on a farm in northern Germany. One leading hypothesis suggested that he escaped to South America through Vatican rat lines, aided by sympathizers. Critics countered that no credible sightings were documented, and Bormann's distinctive appearance made anonymity unlikely. In 1972, workers uncovering a construction site near Berlin's Lehrter Bahnhof found 2 skeletons. Forensic experts matched dental work to Bormann's records. Autopsy reports described glass fragments in the jaws. Consistent with cyanide capsules, DNA tests in 1998 compared the remains to a living relative and confirmed they were Bormann's. Researchers disagree only about whether he killed himself immediately or succumbed to wounds. His disappearance fueled conspiracy theories because no body was displayed and because other Nazis did escape. The enduring image is of Bormann in a trench coat boarding a U-boat under moonlight. The reality is that he died during the chaotic last hours of the war and lay in an unmarked grave for decades. The case illustrates how the absence of a corpse invites speculation, even when circumstantial evidence is strong. For decades, whispers circulated about a secret prisoner held in an impenetrable cell. Some claimed the Soviets kept Heinrich Müller, the Gestapo chief, in a Moscow basement. Others said Rudolf Hess, jailed for flying solo to Britain in 1941, was replaced by a double in Spandau prison, while the real Hess was hidden away. Records confirm that Hess flew to Scotland without Hitler's permission, was imprisoned by Britain, and later convicted at Nuremberg. He was the sole occupant of Spandau in his later years and died there in 1987. A leading hypothesis posited that British or Soviet intelligence swapped him with a doppelganger to extract information or to hide embarrassing negotiations. Critics countered that this would require a complex conspiracy among guards, doctors, and the prisoner himself. In 2019, scientists compared DNA from a blood sample taken from Spandau prisoner number 7 with that of a living Hess relative. The match was effectively certain. Heinrich Müller's fate remains less clear. Some believe he died in Berlin during the final battle. Others argue Soviet forces captured him and he died in a camp. The Russian government has never produced his remains. The man in the Iron Mask myth persists because it evokes secrecy and Cold War intrigue. The vivid detail often cited is a heavy steel door closing on a nameless inmate as guards exchange knowing glances. In truth, evidence points to a straightforward tale of death amid wartime chaos and a prisoner living out his days under watchful Allied eyes. The allure lies in the possibility of hidden archives and secret detainees, but no proof has emerged. The Amber Room began as a dazzling chamber of amber panels, gold leaf, and mirrors in Russia's Catherine Palace. During Operation Barbarossa, German forces dismantled the room and transported it to Königsberg. Displaying it in the Castle Museum records confirm that the panels were created and last catalogued in January 1945. What happened next divides historians. Some evidence suggests the panels were destroyed when Allied bombers set the castle ablaze. Amber burns at relatively low temperatures, and witnesses reported intense fires. A leading hypothesis holds that the room was packed onto a ship, perhaps the cargo vessel SS Karlsruhe, and sunk while fleeing. The city divers exploring the wreck of the Karlsruhe in 2020 found crates, but no amber. Other theories place the treasure in salt mines or secret bunkers. Critics argue that decades of searches across Poland, Germany, and the Baltic have yielded nothing, implying the amber was lost to fire. Today, a meticulous reconstruction shines in the restored palace, assembled using historical photographs and surviving fragments. The enduring image of crates being lowered into a dark ship's hold amid falling snow underscores the mystery. The Amber Room's fate remains one of the war's most alluring puzzles because it combines art, theft, and the chaos of the war's end. On 26 July 1945, the cruiser USS Indianapolis delivered components of the first atomic bomb to the island of Tinian. Its mission was so secret that few on board knew the cargo. 3 days later, a Japanese submarine fired torpedoes that tore open the hull. Records confirm the ship sank in 12 minutes. About 300 of the 1,196 crew went down with her. The rest were cast adrift without adequate lifeboats or water. For nearly 4 days, they suffered dehydration, exposure, and shark attacks. Only 316 survived. The Navy learned of the sinking only after survivors were spotted by a patrol plane. A leading controversy centers on why rescue was delayed. Some argue that the Navy's failure to note the ship's non-arrival was negligence. Others say strict radio silence and miscommunication prevented a timely search. Captain Charles McVeigh was court-martialed for failing to zigzag, a maneuver meant to evade submarines. Critics counter that zigzagging would not have saved the vessel and that McVeigh was made a scapegoat. Decades later, survivors and historians lobbied for his exoneration, and in 2000 Congress and the Navy formally cleared his record. The wreck of the Indianapolis was discovered in 2017, 2 miles below the surface. Photographs show a broken hull resting in eerie silence. This mystery is less about what happened than why. Why the Navy let so many die, why command decisions were made, and why it took so long to correct the official record. The human cost and the dramatic context of the atomic mission imbue the story with enduring resonance. Pause, if you will, to imagine sailors floating in oil-slicked water, scanning the horizon for ships that never came. Stories of lost Nazi gold have flourished since the war. One of the most persistent involves a train allegedly packed with bullion, art, and weapons that vanished in 1945 in the forests of Lower Silesia. In 2015, 2 treasure hunters claimed to have located a buried train near the town of Wałbrzych in Poland. Geologists and engineers surveyed the site with ground-penetrating radar records, confirmed that Polish authorities authorized excavations. They found disturbed ground but no train, only old tunnels. A leading hypothesis suggests that the gold train legend sprang from genuine wartime shipments of valuables, but was amplified by treasure hunters. Critics counter that the legend gained traction in part because the Nazis did hide gold in alpine lakes and mines. Operation Bernhard's counterfeit currency was recovered from Lake Toplitz. Divers have pulled chests of forged pounds from the muddy depths, and rumors persist of bullion still resting below. Searching those depths is dangerous. Logs and branches in the water have claimed lives, and no gold has been recovered. The myth endures because a missing cache of gold is a tantalizing plot. Realities include recovered bank gold after the war, caches found by Allied forces, and unresolved claims against Swiss banks. Yet no credible evidence places a train filled with gold in a Polish tunnel. The vivid detail is of miners in 1945 under orders to dynamite a tunnel entrance, turning their backs as dust billows out. The gold train remains a metaphor for the larger unresolved issue of stolen wealth and the difficulties of restitution. On 10th May 1941, Deputy Führer Rudolf Hess flew a Messerschmitt Bf-110 from Augsburg to Scotland. He parachuted near Dungovel Castle, claiming to bear a peace proposal, for Britain records confirmed that he acted alone and without Hitler's approval. British authorities imprisoned him and later tried him at Nuremberg, where he received a life sentence. Researchers disagree on his motives. Some think he sought to persuade Britain to join Germany against the Soviet Union. Others suggest mental instability. His diary entries show paranoia and delusions. Hess's flight created internal shockwaves in Berlin and led to his eclipse. After the war, he became the sole inmate of Spandau prison. A leading hypothesis posits that he had contact with a faction of British politicians receptive to negotiation. Critics counter, there is no documentation of any serious peace talks. Hess himself offered little clarity. His memory and statements were erratic. Conspiracy theories claimed his plane was swapped, that he was murdered in prison, or that a double served his sentence. DNA tests in 2019 compared a blood sample from the prison to a living male relative and found a match, confirming the prisoner was indeed Hess. He hanged himself in 1987. The drama of an Axis leader flying solo into enemy territory invites speculation, but the evidence portrays it as an act of desperation and delusion. Pause and imagine a twin-engined aircraft cutting through night skies over the North Sea, carrying a man whose plan was as audacious as it was doomed. 2 German submarines surrendered in Argentina after Germany's surrender. U-530 reached Mar del Plata on the 10th of July 1945, and U-977 arrived on the 17th of August. Records confirm they made long voyages across the Atlantic, partly submerged using snorkels. Allied intelligence interrogated the crews and inspected the boats. U-530's captain said he destroyed secret documents and munitions at sea. U-977's commander took his vessel to Argentina rather than surrender in Europe, hoping for better treatment. After repatriation, both crews were cleared of wrongdoing. A leading hypothesis suggests these boats ferried Nazi leaders, loot, or even Hitler to South America. Critics counter that evidence is lacking. Logs show no extra passengers, and technical limitations would have made such voyages with heavy cargo or passengers difficult. A more grounded version speculates that one of the submarines might have landed high-ranking officers on the Patagonian coast before surrendering. Again, no documentation or eyewitness account supports this. The persistence of the legend reflects broader myths about Nazis escaping to Argentina. Historians note that some war criminals did flee via rat lines, but they used standard vessels or overland routes. U-530 and U-977 were not involved. The vivid image of a submarine surfacing under the Southern Cross, disgorging shadowy figures onto a remote beach, remains lodged in popular imagination. The reality is that the boat's crews surrendered to end a hopeless war and were interned. The myth shows how slender facts can birth enduring stories. Adolf Hitler and Eva Braun were last seen alive in the Führer bunker on the 30th of April, 1945. Hitler shot himself. Braun took cyanide. Their bodies were burned in the Chancellery Garden by SS-aid Soviet troops, recovered charred remains which were examined by pathologists. Records confirm that dental assistants who had worked on Hitler's teeth identified bridge work consistent with his dental chart. In 2017, Russian authorities allowed French researchers to examine a jawbone and dental remains. The teeth matched Hitler's records, and chemical analysis detected blue staining consistent with cyanide. A leading hypothesis throughout the Cold War held that Hitler survived and fled to Argentina or Antarctica. Soviet leader Joseph Stalin hinted at this possibility, partly to justify ongoing searches for hidden enemies. Critics counter that all forensic evidence points to suicide. The myth gained traction because the Soviets withheld the remains and because some Nazis did escape. Books, films, and fringe researchers have elaborated on the idea of a fugitive Führer living in Patagonia or a secret Antarctic base. No credible document, photograph, or testimony supports these claims. The truth appears prosaic and grim. Hitler died in a bunker, was hastily burned, and his remains were eventually buried in secret. The image of a mustached man in dark glasses boarding a U-boat persists in popular culture, but the case is closed for historians. The significance of the myth lies in our discomfort with anticlimax. We may prefer to imagine the world's most notorious dictator living in shameful exile, rather than ending his life in a bunker. In 1938-39, the German ship Schwabenland sailed to Antarctica, deploying Dornier seaplanes to survey and map an area named Neuschwabenland. The mission aimed to scout whaling grounds and stake a claim. Records confirm the expedition lasted about a month and dropped aluminum darts with flags to mark territory. After the war, some writers claimed the expedition built a secret base carved into ice mountains, resupplied by U-boats, and that Hitler and other Nazis later took refuge there. A leading hypothesis among conspiracists posits that the U.S. Navy's Operation High Jump in 1946-47 was actually a military assault on this base. Critics counter with logistics. The Schwabenland lacked equipment to build a base. U-boats of the era could not travel to inland Antarctic sites. And Operation High Jump, involving 4,700 men and 33 aircraft, was a combined scientific and training mission. No post-war mapping surveys, satellite imagery, or scientific expeditions have discovered any Nazi structures. The myth persists because Antarctica's remoteness invites speculation, and because secret bases fit Cold War narratives. The vivid images of a Zeppelin-sized cavern under ice where swastika banners hang and flying saucers lie dormant. In reality, the German expedition collected meteorological and geographic data and went home. High Jump focused on cold weather operations, not subterranean warfare. The story shows how real expeditions can be repurposed into lore when evidence is scarce and imagination runs high. Otto Wächter, SS governor of Galicia and later of the Reichskommissariat Ostland, oversaw ghettos and mass murder. After the war, he evaded capture. Records confirm he hid in Austrian mountains before fleeing to Rome, where a network involving Catholic clerics, known as the Rat Lines, sheltered fugitives. Wächter adopted a false identity and planned to reach Argentina. In 1949, he died suddenly in a Roman hospital. A leading hypothesis from his family claimed he was poisoned by British or Soviet agents. They pointed to his rapid decline. Critics counter that medical notes describe jaundice, fever, and kidney failure consistent with leptospirosis contracted from contaminated water in the catacombs. Letters he wrote show he had been ill for weeks. Historians see his case as emblematic of how many Nazis escaped justice. The Rat Lines, documented in declassified files, transported hundreds of war criminals. Wächter's death remains unexplained because no autopsy results survive and because his body was not exhumed. The evocative detail is of a man hiding under Vatican protection, passing a cobbled alleyway where cats drink from a fountain. He feels safe, yet his body harbors disease. The mystery speaks to the murky intersection of church networks, intelligence agencies, and post-war politics. Faced with military defeat, Nazi leaders invested in so-called Wunderwaffen, technological marvels meant to turn the tide. Records confirm significant resources were poured into the V-1 and V-2 missiles, the Me-262 jet fighter, and prototypes like the massive Panzer VIII Maus tank. The V-2, developed under Werner von Braun, was the world's first ballistic missile. It rained terror on London and Antwerp beginning in September 1944. Yet each V-2 delivered only a 1-ton warhead at enormous cost. The program consumed up to 2 billion Reichsmarks, comparable to the Manhattan Project, and killed thousands of slave laborers. The Me-262 was the first operational jet fighter, with 2 Jumo 004 engines and a top speed around 540 miles per hour. Although superior to Allied propeller planes, only about 300 of the 1,400 built saw combat, partly because of fuel shortages and Hitler's insistence on using it as a bomber. A leading hypothesis suggests that if Germany had prioritized the Me-262 earlier, it might have contested Allied air superiority. Critics counter that structural and logistical problems would have limited its impact, regardless. Projects like the Horten Flying Wing, a stealthy prototype, never progressed beyond testing. The vivid image is a gleaming jet streaking above a bombed city as anti-aircraft guns swivel in vain. The real lesson is that investing in miracle weapons while neglecting proven systems and logistics hastened defeat. The wonder weapons were engineering feats but strategic failures. Aviation pioneer Amelia Earhart vanished over the Pacific in July 1937 while attempting to circumnavigate the globe. The last radio transmissions placed her near Howland Island. The U.S. Navy searched 250,000 square miles of ocean but found nothing. Records confirm that she and navigator Fred Noonan disappeared 2 years before the war began. Yet because the Pacific became a theater of war, her fate got entangled with wartime myths. One theory posits that she was a spy for President Roosevelt, scouting Japanese fortifications in the Marshall Islands. Critics counter that her flight path was publicly announced and nowhere near the Marshalls. There is no evidence of espionage. Another narrative claims that she crash-landed on Mili Atoll, was captured by the Japanese, and died on Saipan proponents cite anecdotal testimonies and ambiguous photographs. Researchers disagree. Some materials found on a remote Pacific island could be from her plane, but none are conclusive. The leading scholarly view, based on fuel calculations and radio signals, holds that her Lockheed Electra ran out of fuel and ditched at sea. The Earhart mystery persists because she was a trailblazing woman, and because the war reshaped the region she vanished in. The vivid image is of her twin-engine plane, polished and sleek, flying low over endless waves as the sun sets. Earhart's story reminds us how quickly rumor can fill silence. In a world at war, even a missing aviator becomes a pawn in larger narratives. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel commanded the German Afrika Korps and became known as the Desert Fox. After his defeat in North Africa, rumors emerged that he had hidden treasure, gold, cash, and jewels, stolen from banks and Jewish families. The legend places the loot in caves on Corsica, in Italian lakes, or in sunken ships off the Mediterranean coast. Records confirm that some Axis officers transported valuables out of North Africa as Allied forces advanced, and that convoys carried currency to fund defensive operations. A leading hypothesis holds that a staff officer was instructed to safeguard the funds, but the shipment vanished when its transport was sunk. Critics counter that no wartime documents mention millions in gold. Rommel's personal wealth was modest. Searches by divers and treasure hunters in the waters off Bastia and in mountain caves have found nothing. Rommel returned to Germany and was later forced to commit suicide after implicating himself, knowingly or not, in the July 20th plot. He left no note about hidden gold. The vivid detail often recounted is of heavy chests being loaded onto a motor torpedo boat at dusk, water lapping gently against the dock. The Rommel treasure story persists because it connects a charismatic commander with the allure of hidden wealth. It likely stems from the general chaos of retreat, when assets vanished and accounting was impossible. The real treasure was the propaganda value of the Desert Fox legend. In April 1945, as Soviet forces encircled Berlin, Martin Bormann ordered Operation Seraglio to evacuate Nazi leaders and documents to Bavaria. 10 aircraft took off from Gatow airfield on the 20th of April. The last of these, a Junkers Jew 352 transport, piloted by Major Friedrich Gundelfiner, carried heavy chests overseen by Hitler's valet. Records confirm the plane crashed in forests near the Czech border. Residents later found charred wreckage and scattered documents. Hitler reportedly lamented the loss, saying the cargo contained papers that would reveal his true intentions. A leading hypothesis suggests that the chests held personal diaries and correspondence. The crash gave rise to forgeries. Decades later, forged Hitler diaries surfaced, claimed to have been salvaged from this flight. Critics counter that any documents on the plane likely burned. The crash site was thoroughly searched by Soviet troops, and no authenticated diary was found. The missing flight has been dubbed the Luftwaffe's MH370 because its cargo remains unknown, and because its story has been exploited by fraudsters. The vivid image is of crates strapped in a dark fuselage, the crew nervously watching the mountains ahead as flak bursts light the night. The Seraglio mystery underscores how the scramble to evacuate the Nazi inner circle spawned both legitimate questions and lucrative hoaxes. During Japan's occupation of Southeast Asia, military units seized gold, jewelry, and works of art. Legend holds that General Tomoyuki Yamashita oversaw the transport of these treasures to the Philippines for safekeeping. As Allied forces closed in, tunnels and caves were booby-trapped and sealed with explosives. Rumors claim as much as several $1 billion worth of loot remains hidden in underground vaults. Records confirm that Japanese forces did move loot through Manila. Some shipments were intercepted by Allied troops. General Yamashita was executed for war crimes in 1946 and denied any knowledge of treasure. A leading hypothesis suggests that small caches of valuables were hidden and later recovered by soldiers or local peasants. Critics counter that the scale of treasure described by treasure hunters is implausible. In the 1970s, a Filipino locksmith named Rogelio Roxas claimed to have found a solid gold Buddha containing diamonds. He said Ferdinand Marcos's agents confiscated it. Court cases in Hawaii awarded damages to Roxas's heirs, implying the Buddha existed. Yet no trove of hundreds of tons of gold has surfaced. The vivid detail is of dark, humid tunnels carved through limestone, lined with rotting wooden crates marked with Japanese characters, a faint smell of explosives in the air. The Yamashita story reflects the chaos of retreat, the real looting that occurred, and the ease with which unaccounted wealth fuels speculation. The attack on Pearl Harbor occurred on 7 December 1941. Japanese forces launched 353 aircraft in 2 waves, sinking or damaging 8 battleships and killing 2,403 Americans. In the years since, numerologists and conspiracy theorists have pointed out supposed patterns. The date July 12th, or December 7th, depending on notation, adds to 19. The attacking fleet included 6 carriers and launched 353 planes, a combination some see as symbolic. The time difference meant it was December 8th in Tokyo, echoing the number 8 across events. Records confirm these numbers but attach no significance beyond logistics and planning. A leading hypothesis by conspiracists posits that elements in the US government let the attack happen to draw America into the war and orchestrated numeric symbolism as part of a ritual. Critics counter that extensive archival research reveals missed signals and intelligence failures, but no evidence of deliberate collusion or numerology. Historians note that humans are predisposed to find patterns, especially after traumatic events. The vivid image is of the Arizona tilting under black smoke, while sailors scramble across oil-slicked water. Numbers fade before the human reality. This so-called mystery reminds us that coincidences are inevitable when we analyze complex events. The pursuit of patterns can distract from the documented causes, diplomatic breakdowns, misread intelligence, and Japanese strategic choices. During 1942, Allied convoys braved Arctic waters to deliver supplies to the Soviet Union. Convoy PQ-17 consisted of 35 merchant ships escorted by naval vessels. It sailed from Iceland on 27 June 1942. On the 4th of July, British Admiralty leaders, fearing that the German battleship Tirpitz was en route to intercept, ordered the convoy to scatter. Records confirm that Tirpitz remained in its fjord. The order was based on faulty intelligence. Once dispersed, the unprotected merchantmen were easy prey for U-boats and aircraft. German forces sank 24 ships, and only 11 reached the port of Arkhangelsk. The convoy lost over 153,000 tons of supplies, including tanks, aircraft, and trucks. The disaster shocked Allied leaders. Winston Churchill called it one of the most melancholy naval episodes. A leading hypothesis suggests the decision to scatter was a panicked overreaction. Critics counter that Admiral Sir Dudley Pound acted to prevent a potential massacre by a battleship. At the time, the loss of a convoy to Tirpitz would have been catastrophic for morale. The debate continues about whether retaining the convoy's cohesion would have been safer. PQ-17's fate influenced later Arctic operations. Convoys were suspended for months. The vivid detail is of sailors on a lonely merchant vessel, watching the horizon as escort ships turn away, leaving them to face the cold, gray sea. The PQ-17 catastrophe illustrates how miscalculations and fear can doom an operation. Swedish diplomat Raoul Wallenberg issued protective passports in Budapest and saved tens of thousands of Jews from deportation. On 17 January 1945, Soviet forces arrested him on suspicion of espionage. He was taken to Moscow's Lubyanka prison. Records confirm he was interrogated and that he was registered in the internal prison system. Soviet authorities later claimed he died of a heart attack in 1947. Researchers disagree. Former prisoners reported seeing Wallenberg alive in the 1950s. In the 1990s, Russian officials allowed Swedish researchers to review some files, but said many had been destroyed. A leading hypothesis is that Wallenberg was executed on Stalin's orders, possibly for his connections to the U.S. War Refugee Board. Another posits that he died of illness and that his death was concealed. To avoid diplomatic embarrassment, critics note the lack of a death certificate or body. Sweden was neutral and could not compel the Soviet Union to release him or provide information. The vivid image is of a man in prison garb, pacing a damp cell, listening for the footsteps of guards who never say why he is there. Wallenberg's disappearance remains a profound moral puzzle, a savior, swallowed by the system he helped mitigate. It underscores how even heroic deeds could not protect someone from the opaque machinery of Soviet power. During the war, several Allied and Axis aircraft returned from missions without their crews. One of the most famous cases is the B-17 bomber, nicknamed Ghost of Metfield. On 23 November 1944, a B-17 of the 95th Bomb Group was hit over Germany. The crew bailed out. Unpiloted, the bomber flew back across the channel, circled the English countryside, and crash-landed in an empty field near the village of Metfield. Witnesses saw the empty plane descend gracefully, its engines sputtering. Investigators found that its cockpit controls were jammed by flak damage, locking the control surfaces in a stable position. Wartime censorship and rumors led to tall tales about a ghost crew. A leading hypothesis suggests that such incidents were rare, but not supernatural. Autopilot systems and trimming could keep a plane steady for a while. Critics of the paranormal view note that similar ghost ships at sea have been documented under comparable conditions. The vivid images of a shimmering silver bomber gliding silently to Earth, propellers windmilling, with villagers running toward it. The ghost bomber myth illustrates how extraordinary circumstances can produce eerie scenes that invite imaginative embellishment. It also reminds us that mechanical resilience sometimes outlives human presence. Submarines from all sides vanished during the war. Allied boats like USS Greyback and Axis boats, like U-47, went missing without distress calls. Records for many of these submarines show last known positions and missions, but no final radio messages. Decades later, modern sonar and underwater vehicles have located some wrecks. For example, the USS Greyback, lost in 1944, was found off Okinawa in 2019 using Japanese records that corrected a translation error in its last coordinates U-47. The boat, commanded by Gunther Preen, sank HMS Royal Oak in Scapa Flow in 1939 and became a propaganda symbol. It disappeared in March 1941 while attacking convoy HX-112. Many suspect it was sunk by depth charges from British destroyers, but no wreck has been definitively identified. A leading hypothesis suggests U-47 was destroyed by its own torpedo malfunction or a mine. Another posits it went down in deep Atlantic waters where search is impractical. Families and navies sought closure. Some wrecks were declared war graves. The vivid images of a steel hull resting on the seabed, encrusted with coral, with rusted torpedo tubes pointing into the dark, disappearing submarines, remind us that large machines can vanish in oceans that still hold secrets. Advances in technology continue to solve some cases but leave others unsolved. Anne Frank and her family hid in a secret annex in Amsterdam from July 1942 until they were arrested in August 1944. Someone told the Gestapo about their hiding place. Records confirm that a raid led by SS officer Karl Silberbauer arrested the occupants. For decades, speculation has swirled about the betrayer's identity. Early suspicions fell on warehouse workers. Later, attention focused on a neighbor. In 2016, a cold case team suggested that a Jewish notary named Arnold van den Berg provided lists of hiding Jews to the Nazis in exchange for his family's safety. Researchers disagree over the evidence. The report relied on a single unsigned note found in Otto Frank's papers and on speculation about van den Berg's activities. Critics counter that van den Berg had gone into hiding himself and had no access to addresses. Other hypotheses include a blackmailer or an opportunistic burglar who stumbled on the annex. The Dutch National Police reopened the case multiple times but concluded there is insufficient evidence to indict anyone. The vivid image is of creaking stairs behind a bookcase, of whispering families listening for knocks that could mean salvation or doom. The betrayal of Anne Frank remains a painful mystery because it personalized the machinery of genocide. It also raises questions about moral choices under occupation. Starting in late 1944, Japan launched more than 9,000 hydrogen balloons carrying incendiary and anti-personnel bombs, hoping the jet stream would carry them across the Pacific. Hundreds reached North America. Most landed in remote forests and caused small fires that U.S. authorities suppressed. Records confirm that 6 people, the pregnant wife of a minister, and 5 children, were killed in Oregon when they approached a downed balloon in May 1945. To prevent panic and deny Japan feedback, the U.S. government censored reports. A leading hypothesis suggests the program aimed to start forest fires and divert resources. Its strategic impact was minimal because the balloons dispersed widely. Critics argue that the censorship inadvertently allowed the tragedy in Oregon because locals were unaware of the danger. The balloons continue to surface. As recently as the 2010s, forestry workers found remnants in British Columbia and Alaska. The vivid image is of a translucent white balloon drifting silently over pine trees, its paper skin shimmering, trailing bombs on long ropes. The Fugo campaign reveals both the innovation and desperation of late-war Japan and illustrates the global reach of the conflict. In April 1945, Benito Mussolini attempted to escape Italy with his mistress and a convoy of fascist officials. They carried suitcases and chests. Partisans captured the column near the village of Dongo on Lake Como. Mussolini was executed. His convoy's luggage was seized. Among the items were gold bars, foreign currency, and documents, including correspondence with Hitler and details of secret negotiations with the Allies. Records confirm that some of these materials disappeared. A leading hypothesis is that partisans divided the money among themselves, or that Allied intelligence agents removed sensitive documents. Another suggests the Vatican or Swiss bankers obtained the goods. The fate of Mussolini's treasure remains unclear because inventories are incomplete and witness accounts conflict. Critics point out that post-war political maneuvering in Italy created incentives to obscure the contents of the convoy, and that treasure might have been exaggerated. The vivid detail is of partisans searching a luggage-laden truck, lantern light reflecting off gold bars, while their leader deliberates whether to keep or hand over the spoils. The Dongo episode illustrates how the collapse of a regime generates chaos in record-keeping and accountability. It also feeds into larger narratives about hidden fascist wealth and clandestine negotiations. In March 1943, the German auxiliary cruiser Doggerbank, disguised as the Dutch ship Speebank, sailed from Japan toward Europe carrying a cargo of rubber, strategic metals, and possibly gold. It transmitted secret signals to avoid German mines and friendly fire. On March 3rd, U-boat U-43, unaware of the signals or misinterpreting them, torpedoed the vessel. The Doggerbank sank within minutes. Only one of its 365 crew and passengers survived to tell the tale. Records show that the cargo list included bales of rubber and tungsten. Rumors later claimed it also carried Japanese gold, blueprints for advanced aircraft, or uranium oxide. A leading hypothesis suggests that the cargo did not include precious metal because no insurance records or shipping documents mention it. Critics counter that clandestine shipments were routinely excluded from manifests. The rapid sinking left no time for a distress call or salvage. The wreck's location in the Atlantic's deep waters makes exploration difficult. The vivid images of sailors on the U-43 hearing a distant explosion and feeling their boat shudder, unaware they had sunk a friendly vessel. Doggerbank's story highlights wartime confusion and the vulnerability of secret cargoes. It remains unresolved mainly because the wreck lies deep and because wartime secrecy clouds cargo records. World War II generated mountains of documents, miles of film, and warehouses of artifacts. It also generated silences. Some silences were intentional, created by regimes that destroyed evidence or withheld records to serve post-war narratives. Others were accidental, the result of ships sinking without distress calls or bombs incinerating archives. In the decades since, researchers have filled many gaps. Forensics identified bones in Berlin, sonar mapped ocean floors, declassified files illuminated covert operations. Yet, even as one mystery fades, another emerges or gains new life. Rumors flourish in the spaces between documents. Human imagination seeks closure where there is none. Our tour of 25 puzzles underscores how the war's scope and speed left trails that were lost almost as soon as they were made. It also highlights the distinction between evidence and conjecture. Records confirm events, while competing hypotheses fill the voids. In some cases, as with Bormann's remains or Hitler's teeth, science closes the door on speculation. In others, like the betrayal of Anne Frank or the fate of Raoul Wallenberg, the door remains ajar because key documents are missing, or because those involved took their secrets to their graves. These mysteries invite a kind of humility. They remind us that history is not a complete set of encyclopedias, but a mosaic with missing pieces. We may never know the full contents of a sunken ship, the exact path of a missing plane, or the identity of a wartime informant. What matters is the rigorous pursuit of truth, the willingness to revise our assumptions, and the recognition that some questions may remain. This recognition does not diminish the importance of the war's known lessons. On the contrary, it deepens them. It forces us to reckon with the fragility of evidence and the endurance of myth. At the intersection of fact and speculation, our fascination persists. And at the end of this exploration, one line endures, an epitaph for a world shaken by conflict and for the enigmas it left behind. History remembers the facts. Time preserves the questions.